Welcome to the Colorful Clipboard, where we discuss the building blocks of making dough in childcare. I'm Kate.
And I'm Carrie.
Okay, welcome back to Colorful Clipboard. Today we have a guest who is Josh Baker, who is an amazing photographer. He does both commercial work and artistic work. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about the use of visual storytelling in your business, why it's important, and why you should maybe consider occasionally hiring a Josh type human to take some of those photos.
You mean that photos shouldn't be taken always from your cell phone from a child's point of view?
No. Again, I don't like the up the nose photos. I don't understand the attraction of them. So please stop taking photos of the inside of your nostril.
All right. So Josh, we have a lot of the people who listen to us are directors of childcare centers and business owners.
Okay.
And how would you tell them to even start trying to tell their story with photos? What would be something you might start to give them as a starting place?
Sure. Yeah. So a couple y'all each asked me a question, so I'll do my best to answer them in the fastest order that I can. My name is Josh Baker. I'm a photographer. You can find us online at Azulox. That's probably the easiest way. Just AZULOX. You can see what we do. But I think to answer y'all's questions, I think never in history has the visual photo been more important. People are busy. We're not going to read an article. It's why you see the proliferation of things like podcasts. We want to listen and we want to see. And we're often listening as we're doing something else. And we need great visual imagery to tell the story quickly in a way that an article or, 1,000-word blog post just can't do. And so never has access to photography been as prevalent. The caveat being never has it been harder to raise your brand above the noise, right? No matter what business you're doing, there's probably a lot of people that are also trying to do it. And so how do you signify that you are not run of the mill, that you're above average, that you're worthy of that person's money? I think for a while we saw a proliferation of stock photography and websites because we're just like, hey, we're just going to build it quick. And then the consumer got very savvy with picking those out. And it soon became, if you had stock photography, it assumed that you were a fly-by-night operation and not worthy of money. And so what happened was that quickly fell out of favor. And what I would call private stock, which is a lot of what we do, where we go in for a business and we do, a round of headshots. We'll do, some lifestyle photos, some branding photos. And for a lot of our clients, we'll go in maybe, somewhere between 1 and 4 times a year. We'll update, all of their, the access to their photos. And it's a large pool of photos for them to use in their social media, on their websites, on their pamphlets, on their brochures.
So you talked about 2 different types, and I think I know what they are, but I'm not sure that everybody else does. So you talked about lifestyle shots, and then you used another word that I forgot already. Branding.
Yeah.
So what would be the difference between the 2 shots in a childcare center?
Sure. So in a childcare center, so lifestyle would be kind of in the moment shots where, it was just, the peak of the action, a real life event, but a really good frame from like something that was actually going on.
So like a kid who's really into Play-Doh, really building with blocks or really playing with Play-Doh or sliding down the slide with the biggest grin on their face. Those kinds of things would fall into that category.
Yeah. I mean, and you could use some of them interchangeably. I mean, the words get used, but in my mind, branding would be like, those photos where, your teachers and your adults are all wearing, branded clothing, and they're subtly marketing the service as you're seeing the photo as well. Branding photos also might be something like, cutting a ribbon at a local chamber of commerce ceremony, or maybe it's a picture of the award you got. Where you're selling the brand or you're building the brand recognition, or you're adding authenticity to the brand. Whereas lifestyle really, to me, confers that you are, you're at your place. These are our teachers, these are our students, these are our buildings, and this is what things look like.
Okay, so I have a funny
Okay.
thought, just because of of where we are currently. If you wanted to show that your program was safe and using appropriate PEE or social distancing that's still in place for childcare centers, would it be considered branding if you had specifically had people coming in and you had some even fake photo, like fake cars, that where literally the director or a staff person was exchanging a child underneath the sign of your business? Is that what you mean by a branding photo?
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, all photos are branding photos, right? Everything you're doing is to promote your brand, your business. To me, lifestyle is the smaller category there, where it's more in the moment. Where to me, just branding is kind of more, it could be a more general thing. Anything that promotes your business is kind of a branding photo.
So why would they use a professional? Why would they not just do it themselves?
Well, if you want a photo of yourself, it's very hard, right? If you're, depending on the size of your operation, right? If you want a great photo of yourself in the moment, I don't think you can do it. But really, what you're hiring has very little to do with taking the picture. So much of it is what's not in the photo. When you hire a professional photographer, we are paid to speak a visual language that we can communicate a whole bunch in a very short amount of time that would take the average person a much longer time to get to that proficiency. I speak visual every day, and you are a consumer. You're like, think of it like language, right? So there's a lot of people who grow up around a second language and they can understand it, but they can't necessarily speak it. And I think as a people, as a general population, we consume visual imagery every day, but we can't all speak it. And what you're paying me to do as the photographer is to be able to speak that language.
That makes a lot of sense. Because, yeah, we as directors, as people who are working in early childhood, we know what would make a good picture. Like, oh, this would, like I said before, the Play-Doh, or a child who's really into what they're building in the block center or coming down the slide. But we don't necessarily know how to tell that story. We just are like, I've seen a picture like this. It was awesome.
Right. And if I sent you 10, you would be able to pick out the best one that works for you, right? Like we can all understand it enough that when we see it, we're like, yep, that's the one for us. But to generate that is totally different. That's a totally different skill set.
Yeah, that makes a
lot
of sense.
So if it does, so would you suggest that childcare centers, when they're starting to rethink or rebrand or do an update, should they be making a list of the types of photos they think they want? Should they be looking at the photos and then do brochures and then do websites, or how does that work? In other words, you're starting from scratch, you're using the former stock photos that you paid your money for. How do you make this transition, and what's the best way to support a professional who's going to help them?
Yeah, I think a huge part of all of this is relationships. My least favorite quote that people say is a business quote, but I think it's terrible business, is when they say, "Man, it's not personal, it's just business." And I think that quote should be 100% reversed, in that it should be, "Hey, I'm running a business. Everything I do is personal." So I think finding somebody that can do that role of photography, of telling the story, is really important. And it doesn't matter how good their photos are if they're a jerk to work with, if they don't fit your vision. And so there may be some trial and error, right? But finding that person that is the right brand storyteller for you is I think that's the biggest part, is finding that person that you can work with that understands what you want. But secondly, I think set up the parameters and just let them go to work. I think it all comes down to how you want to tell your story. Do you plan on posting to social media every day? Well, you're going to run through photos pretty quick, right? You're going to go through. It's not a one-time thing, is what I would suggest. I think it's an evolving, right? The photos from 2019 wouldn't make sense to run in 2020, because in 2020 we're all wearing masks, or we're all wearing gloves, or there'd be a lot more sanitizer in the photos. And so, not that there's not sanitizer at childcare centers anyway, but
or gloves.
but my point being is that your story changes, so your photos should always be current. Now, does every photo have to be professionally taken? No, I don't think so. But I would suggest that most people under budget how many photo assets they're going to use in a given year. And I bet every business And I bet every childcare center wishes they had 400% more good photos to use than they currently have.
I would say that's probably true. Yeah.
Oh, I know that's true. And not just childcare. I mean, I think
It's
every
true for every
business.
business.
Yeah,
It's true for I
every
mean,
business.
that's what we do for a lot of companies is we come in once a quarter, we shoot and we deliver, a couple hundred photos and they burn through those in a quarter and then we go and shoot for them again. And it's always updating and it's always fresh. I mean, if you post to, if you were posting to social media 3 to 5 times a week, I mean, in a quarter, you're going through, 50, 100 photos.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep. And so that's a great tip. I think that maybe we've not stressed enough with our childcare centers, and we've talked in the past about social media. We talked to Amy King about press releases, and we talked about sending photos with press releases from an event. But even what you're talking about as far as those lifestyle photos, I mean, I loved your example, right? Current day photos have masks, sanitizer, gloves, and that's probably not anywhere currently in your, unless you took them on your phone, something that you've thought about, because, I'm probably right up there with people who are going, no, I don't want pictures with my mask on.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair too. I think it just comes down to whatever your strategy is. I don't think that photo or video content, honestly, is a one-off. I don't think it's cool. We got our website built, we got our photos taken, we're good. Like, I don't think that's I don't think that's where the demand is, right? If I were running a daycare and like we went on a field trip, like it'd be good to have, a photographer for that. Somebody outside the organization, because if you're in it, you can't be outside of it to take the photo. And like at my own personal family events, I don't like bringing my camera because once I pick up my camera, I have to be outside my family event and I don't get to enjoy it.
My husband had the same exact thing when he was working as a professional photographer. He took many fewer family photos while he was a photographer than he did before or after.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is speed and efficiency. Like yesterday, I did a family portrait session. We took 500 photos, and they're uploading as soon as I'm done with this podcast, and so it'll be less than a 24-hour time, turnaround. And I think sometimes if you try to do it yourself, it's going to be 20th on your priority list, and maybe you take them, but then you don't do anything with them, and they're just sitting there waiting for you to, to process them, whatever. So some of that too is you're paying for the efficiency. You're paying for them. You're paying for them to be delivered. Hey, I need these by Friday. Okay, cool. Like that's not a big deal to me, but it might be to you. And so
we talk about hiring things done all the time on this podcast. There are things that need to get done, and the director has a huge job, and you need to be able to delegate stuff. And this is an easy thing to delegate and to get somebody in and out. They're there for an hour, hour and a half, and you have all the photos that you need for months.
Yep.
I think that's amazing.
Well, I do too, and I think it's great. It also shows that, again, one of the things that I find interesting, and a lot of times we have childcare center directors who will delegate, but they'll delegate to somebody else on staff who still has a full-time job, right? So again, what would have taken a professional an hour and a half to do might take a staff person an entire day because they're also trying to do their other stuff. So I really think I liked what Carrie said about, hiring it done, but hiring the right person, which you talked about as far as making sure you've got a relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're talking about, if we want to get really deep about it, this is really the basis of capitalism, right? I'm going to do what I do best and I'm going to hire the rest, right? Because if my job as a childcare director is to manage the place and make profit, anything that I do, any activity I spend outside of that role is costing me opportunity to optimize what I'm supposed to be optimizing. And so, I mean, I should be hiring a lot of different things. I mean, photography being one of them. Because, for me, one of the first thing I did was I hired a bookkeeper. That was literally like the first thing I did. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be responsible for it. And I wanted to make sure it was right. And I wanted that other person to be there. And I didn't want to spend those, 5 hours a week, because those 5 hours a week that I could have done it. Could I have done it? Sure. Did I start off doing it? I did. But as soon as I could, I got rid of that so that I could focus on the things that mattered, which were finding new clients and making them delighted in my service. And me spending that 5 hours a week was more than I wanted to spend. And it wasn't a money thing, it was a time thing.
Well, and it's probably not just 5 hours, because there's all the other time where it's in your head and you're
Right.
obsessing with, oh, I've got to do it. So it's the 5 hours that it actually took. Then there's the hours that you put off doing it.
Well, and then there's the time to stay current on it, right? So, like with photography, so let's take somebody that was in photography 15 years ago. How long would it take him to get up to speed today, right? And to stay current takes time and effort. So, if you're going to be your own photographer, how much time and effort each month does it take to stay up to date with software, with backing up your files, with camera technology, with all of those things? Like, it takes a lot of effort just to stay current, right? You're a teacher, certifications. You're an accountant, right? You have to do continuing education and stay current with all those things. And so, everybody's busy and everybody has a lot to do. So, do what you do best and hire the rest.
I love that. I think that needs to be a shirt, Carrie.
Okay.
I'll put it in my merch store for me.
There you go. So would that be on your podcast.com store, or where would that be?
Yeah, I'm finalizing my merch store. So we have some shirts that say things like "Your network is your net worth," which is maybe my favorite quote. And I have a show called Josh Says Mean Things, where I review people's photos. And so I have a shirt that I'm designing that just says mean things, which I think is funny, but I don't know. I think the next question to ask though is, how do you find those photographers? Ooh, good question. Glad you asked.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually where I was going to go, was like, so are you going to be talking to the person who did your, niece's quinceañera? Are you going to be talking to the person who does the car photo shoots? Like, where do you find that person? The guy who advertises in, your neighborhood newsletter? Where do you find the right kind of photographer?
Yeah, I mean, I think don't tie yourself to necessarily the first person you hire, but I would look at places like local chamber of commerce, right? That's that's usually a business focused photographer, right? They're there to be around other businesses, so that kind of shows a business mindset. That would kind of be the first place I would look. And then I would ask your network, right? Who's in your network that knows, right? Go take a look at your other business friends' website and be like, hey, who did you use, right? Because then that personal referral, right? Because then if they're terrible, you can go back to them and be like, hey, you told me this guy was good. They're terrible. But right, Google can't do that. You can't go back to Google and be like, this guy was terrible. He was #1 in your search results. I can't believe that he was awful. Whereas if you go to your friend and be like, hey, who'd you use? I like your website. Like, I use this guy, and then they're terrible. You can go back to your friend and be like, you're terrible. I'm going back to Google. So, I think being able to hold that, but again, relationships matter. So I would go look at my friends' websites and their businesses and see who they used. That and the Chamber of Commerce to me are a great first place to start. You can Google them, but you're going to get so much fluff. It's going to be hard to discern. And then you're going to have paralysis by analysis.
So one other thing that I thought was interesting, and it's only because we often talk about diversifying income.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought something up, and I don't know why we've not talked about this before, but you seem like a good person to bounce it off with, is something like a merchandise for your program. So, I mean, a lot of times childcare centers have t-shirts, and I am a huge get your t-shirt, put your kids in your t-shirt all the time. But I think about all the funny things kids say or the great pieces of artwork. I even talk to people about using that artwork as thank you notes. But how would a business owner in the child industry, so not necessarily just a childcare, what might be some things that they may think about if they decided they wanted to throw a couple of merchandise items on their website, or just they thought they're listening to the show and they're like, oh my Lord, I have kids who say funny things all the time. I want to make it a shirt or a meme or something.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages of living in the age that we do is the personal very quick, right? Used to, if you wanted a t-shirt, you had to order 100 or 500. And now, like we use Teespring, I can make 1 or 5 or 10, right? And so we can do things in different quantities, and there's no real cost to that. And so that's kind of advantageous. You could do something. I know for me, when my kids are in preschool, they took what they did in art and then scanned it. And then they're like, here, you can buy this on a canvas. You can buy this on a t-shirt. And they were monetizing my kids' own work against me. And I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. And they're like, oh, you don't want it? Cool. We're going to delete it. No. I'll buy something.
Yeah. I mean, my nephews have gotten so much money out of my family. There are masks running around my family with 6 and 7-year-old artwork on it because
Yeah,
it was their artwork. My
absolutely.
father-in-law wears them all the time. It's ridiculous.
How awesome. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
masks. The first part to all that.
Uh-oh, Josh had a thought.
Oh no, my computer just everything shut off for a second. Are y'all still there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still here. We can still hear you.
Oh, I had a little power out of that. That was fun. So what I was gonna say is, first is finding a merchandise store, right, provider. So I use Teespring, but there's a bunch out there. But just finding something that works for you that can fill your needs, and then from there, right, T-shirts, mugs, artwork. But even, there's even digital products, right? You could sell your kids' artwork as a phone background,
How
right?
fun.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, you could go a lot of different ways with it, and I think each person's going to have their own story to tell. If I were running a school's Instagram account, like I would love to have like the kids' quote of the week, and you wouldn't have to say what kid it came from, but just like the funny thing they said, like that's content all year,
Well, and
right?
parents would be like, I'm pretty sure that was my son Joey.
That's
True,
exactly what I was thinking. I'm like going, and we're all
true.
sitting here because we all have kids that we'd go like, that was mine.
Yeah, for sure. But as long as there's no identifying thing on there, if it's just a quote, like that's a great way to have content, right? I mean, I think as any business owner, we're always thinking about like how do I generate more content, and content that people will enjoy. A quote from a 4-year-old, awesome. Like that's a fountain of youth that will never run dry. So, that's certainly one. Could you throw that on a T-shirt and sell it back to the parent? Yeah, I probably would have bought a couple of those because my kids were funny in ways they didn't realize.
Well, I'm just thinking like my Christmas shopping would be done, right? I mean, all I need is that one great kid quote, and I
Yeah,
mean, I'm the sap that every time this commercial comes on television, I'm just bawling, which is the little kid who sends a gift to his grandmother, and his grandmother's they've made a 3D of him that he drew. Have you guys seen that stuffed
no.
character?
Yep.
So Josh, I'm going to tell you what it is because it makes me cry. So there's this little boy who drew a picture of himself, and they sent it to somebody on Etsy who made it a stuffed Lovey,
Okay.
and he shipped it to his grandmother. And so and of course it's all by Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, right? Because we can't see each other. And he says something like, now you can hug me when you want to see me, or something like that. And of course, the I start crying every time this ad comes up, but the same kind of thing, right? Can't you just see great opportunities for personalized critters that kids drew, and you can make 5 of them for the grandparent or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think that gets back to what we were talking about earlier, though, is how are you spending your time? Are you spending your time working with content that you have, right? Quotes from kids, good photos, or are you trying to figure out how your camera works? No, I'm serious though. I mean, it's funny, but it's also true, right? Like you only have 40 or 50 hours a week to spend on this. So how are you optimizing your time? And for me, I can come into a job and in an hour, I can get you 200 or 300 photos and deliver them tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but quickly. And then you can do with them what your job is to figure out what to do with them. My job is to take them. And I think that's true with like a merch store. Like, have your teachers and have everybody be on the lookout for things to put on them. And your job is to figure out how to monetize them so that your school can get more revenue, versus, again, trying to learn how a camera works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
and I'm not trying to say it to be cheeky or anything. I'm just saying it, you have to do what you do best. And you're a director, or you're on an executive at a place like that for your higher level skills, not for your lower level skills.
absolutely. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should be doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
500
All right.
times, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think it all circles back to the visual storytelling. What are you telling parents who are enrolled, parents who are thinking about enrolling? What are you telling them about your center? And if you're telling them that we pay enough attention to the kids that we're capturing every week these hilarious things they say, and there's a picture that your photographer took of kids digging in the playground, and then you have the quote under it saying, I'm going to dig all the way to China as the quote of the week on it, then you're marrying those things beautifully.
Yeah. I think something that goes along with that is photography as a signifier. So it doesn't matter as much what is in the photo. But I think as consumers, we are smart enough to know when it's a cell phone picture done poorly versus when it's done by a professional. Like, we can just tell it has a different level of polish. And so just by the quality of the photo, not the content, you're signifying that your brand is quality.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's absolutely true. It's like putting a fresh coat of paint on the outside of your building. You're demonstrating that you care and that you are a quality program. You're not someplace that is slapdash.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. It's all those little touches. And I think photography is one of them. I think visual storytelling is a huge part of all of that. But right, the materials you use, right? What kind of paper do you print on? What's your business card feel like? You know, does any one of those little things matter? Maybe not. But as a whole, what do you want to present to somebody who doesn't know your company, doesn't know your brand, doesn't know your story? And if you come at it with all of those good touch things, right? Their photos look great. You know, their marketing materials feel good. You know, the school is taken care of. There's no trash on the ground, right? We pick up on those clues as parents. We pick up on those clues as consumers, and we make our opinion before we ever hear your message.
Yes, it's all about first impression.
Yeah, it's why I think a headshot is so important. I mean, obviously, I charge people for headshots, but I really think it's important. To me, a great headshot is your digital handshake, right? And so if you have a great headshot and then I walk in, I've already felt like I've met you.
Yeah, so many of them that I see at schools, whether we're talking preschool, elementary, gymnastics academy, whatever, they look like they were taken at Olin Mills in 1987. And
yes, they still look that way.
Yeah, and it tells nothing about that person's personality. They're not engaging. Olin Mills is not around anymore. We need to stop using their style.
Yeah. Well, and I would advocate that we should take them on property, because now you're putting yourself in the context of the school, and that's where people are probably going to meet you. And so if we take a headshot on your playground and then people show up, they go, "Oh yeah, you're here. Of course you're here." Right? We've already sold them on the idea that you and the place work together.
Yeah.
So just absolutely, great feedback, Josh. And it was exactly what I was expecting from you today.
I go deep,
a lot of fun. Well, not only that, just places that I would not have thought we'd go. And who would have thought I'd be like, everybody now needs a little merchandise store with all the strange things kids say, or the, 12 of them into a calendar. And I don't know, my head's a spinning. So with that, I'm just going to wrap it up for the episode, and we'll probably have Josh back, because I'm sure Josh could sit with us for another 45 minutes. And we do appreciate y'all listening to us at Colorful Clipboard.
Let's just once more give Josh an opportunity to plug his podcast, his YouTube channel, and his photography business, in case so people can find him.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, sure. So, yeah, my name's Josh Baker. We're in Pflugerville, Texas. My photography company is called Azul Ox Visuals. You can find us online at azulx.com. Our social media is all at Azulox. On YouTube, we're at Azulox, on all those good things. We also have a podcast where I talk about art and business. We interview artists and talk about how they make money. And that is the makepodcast.com. We're up to 15. We just published our 15th episode, so it's been going fun. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place, but yeah, just search Azulox and you'll find us. Yeah, we'd love to hear from y'all if you have any more questions.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks y'all. Appreciate y'all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Colorful Clipboards. Connect with us on social media at Colorful Clipboard, or send us an email to hello@colorfulclipboards.
Send us your voicemail with your own questions and stories. If you want to keep learning with us, visit Texas Director, where we continue to have seminars, licensing, programs, and more.
This show has been made by me, Carrie Casey, and Kate Young, with assistance from Hallie Casey and Marie Young. If you learned something today, share the show.